Hey folks, Vince the Evil DM here, back with just another episode of General Thoughts here. I had recently watched a video on YouTube done by the RPG Pundit. He does excellent videos, he does excellent train of thoughts about games and RPGs, and you should go check out his channel here on YouTube. I'll probably drop a link here below. But he actually had put up a video, which I had written some notes down here, called How Real RPG Play is Better Than Storytelling. Now, he goes on to talk about in that various reasons about, Critical Role and how that those RPG system, I shouldn't say system, how those games aren't a real telling of how groups are, which is true. They are acted, they are hammed up, they are basically a false sense of what a real group is. And that's fine because they're doing it for entertainment. They're all voice actors, they're actors, they're not scripted, so to speak. I don't think so, at least. They may be, I don't know. But they do ham things up. They overact. Matt Mercer himself does voices and does this and that. But it's not a true vision of what a role-playing game looks like. And people see this and they come into groups and they want to emulate that, and they want DMs to emulate Mercer. They want people to emulate the players and act like it was in the group. And if they don't see this experience, they just leave the group, or they make everybody miserable in the group. And I've experienced this multiple times when playing I live in a college town, so of course young new players, which is great. I love new players coming into this hobby, not community, hobby, to play the game. So I'm happy that more people are coming in to play the game. So I live in a college town, so a lot of younger people do it. When I was playing at the comic book store, this is pre-COVID, they would come into the group with this preconception of how games are run because they listen to Mercer or they listen to the Adventure Zone, which is another one that does the same type of deal as that, but it's just, I think, mostly audio. Not as bad, but up there with that thing. So he goes on to explain that. So I agree with him on that point, but give everybody the benefit of the doubt when they come to the group. And if they say they listen to Critical Role, always be like, well, this group is not like that up front. So he went to say, are RPGs for telling stories? Well, it depends on the RPG you play. If you're playing something like Vampire the Masquerade, that's more of a storytelling system. But it does have rules in it. It's supposed to emulate a world. RPGs emulate a virtual world. It's not realistic. They're never going to be realistic. There's too many things to take into account to make it realistic in a game. Falling damage, for example, in old school D&D, or any D&D, for example. If you're falling from a 60-foot cliff, it doesn't matter how many hit points I have. If I'm falling 60 feet and hitting the ground, I'm probably going to die regardless of what I have on me. And especially if I have a backpack, a full set of armor on. Just think of, if you want to think of real life, think of a SWAT person. All the gear they have, or someone in the military, all you military folks out there, thank you for your service. But you know this, having that tons of gear on your back, shoulders, arms, or whatever, if you fall a small amount, you feel it. Granted, you're trained to have this stuff on you and get used to it as if it's a second skin, but you still feel that when you drop falls. A couple feet, fine. 60 feet with all this stuff on your back, you're dead. There's no surviving that. So that's one thing that's really not realistic to prove my point. RPGs are meant to emulate the world in a virtual sense, so you can just have some fun. RPGs are meant to have fun. The rules are there as guidelines to help progress the funness of the story. That's all. Things can be changed, things can be done. I don't understand the whole concept of storytelling in a game where everybody passes a stick around and it's not really role-playing. But anyway, he went on to say, I'm looking at my notes here, he went on to say that how the new school thought of, keeping track of arrows in a game is unheard of. I'm not quite so certain I agree with that. The amount of 5e players that I played with when I played 5e and when I played with newer edition players coming into my edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons or older games, they were very stickler about those things. When it came to shooting, like, arrows and stuff like that, they wrote it down. They made sure, because most of them have like a game background from video games. They come in from these other games where everything is being tracked. So that's what they're used to. In my games, I really don't track those things, to be honest. What I do is I have the player keep track of it on their own. And after combat, they'll ask if they can recover their arrows, and I will roll a percentage, and that's how many they can recover. And that's basically how I handle it. I don't really go into too much detail. When I play RPGs, I just want to play to have fun. I don't want to really care about the minute details like encumbrance. I mean, logic sense comes into play. You obviously can't pick up a chair and walk around with a chair and have no encumbrance with that chair. Sure, maybe if it's a small chair, you tie it to the back of your backpack or something, and on the end, and you're carrying it, but you still have that weight there. And it comes to like a lot of gold. Common sense comes into play. How much can you really carry? Those are the only realistic things that I do in games. I don't want real world bullshit in my games. I don't want political stuff in my games. Never. I don't care what a character's background is, or an NPC character's background is, because it needs to be shoehorned into a story, because this is the way Wizards of the Coast wants it, so they can check a box. We don't care about that stuff. All we care about is NPCs that want to give information to the players, so the players can move forward in the story that I've written, because it's my story and my world. They're my rules, and that's how I play. Now, sure, a little bit information about, if you're reading a module about a background of an innkeeper is great, but I don't really think it matters, what exactly how he feels about today's political climate. Who cares? He's just there to, add some information, a little fun to the whole thing. So that's all I really wanted to respond with, and I just think that all this fuss about keeping track of things and new school versus old school causes a lot of arguments, but I guess it fuels the whole feud of, the D&D world. That's how games are. You're never not going to have a perfect world where you can't argue about things. All right, well, that's my general thoughts for today. Tell me what you think about these things, and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget to keep original, keep it old school, and good night, everybody.